Okay, so we're going to continue on from where we left off before Shavuot, Perek Mem, chapter 40. In the Tanya, you will find that he quotes many times the Zohar and other books of Kabbalah from where he draws the information. And what's very interesting about all of this is that several hundreds of years ago, before the Ari, a lot of this information was not known. And even though, for example, we knew the importance of kavanah, of intent and focus in the mitzvot and in Torah and in tefillah and prayer, there was no way for the average Jew to know how powerful or how meaningful kavanah really is, what it does in the upper worlds. After all, we don't see what's going on in the upper world. We can only somewhat relate to what happens in this world, what it perhaps does to us. So a lot of this information that the Kabbalah teaches is relatively new. And as a result of the Kabbalah, it is an eye-opener. It really reveals to us a great deal of information that was concealed. It is still somewhat concealed. Most people do not know what is discussed in the Tanya, what the Zohar speaks about, unless you learn it. And even if we learn it, we don't always understand everything it says. But there's no doubt that this information definitely can enhance the learning, the prayer, the performance of any mitzvah, just because of what it teaches, how great and how powerful the kavanah of a mitzvah of the limud Torah can be. It's not just about the reward, the different type of reward that is waiting for us in the world to come. Here we're talking about what it affects in the world, what it does, what our intent does on an individual level, in other words for ourselves, and on a global level, what it does for the world. So imagine if everybody would be doing the mitzvah or praying with the proper kavanah. I have no doubt that our prayers would be answered, and we would definitely be able to discern the great difference in the shefa, in the flow that comes down from the upper worlds to the lower world. Today, we live in a very dark time. And as a result of this darkness, there's more concealment. People relate less to that which is spiritual in nature. They do not necessarily identify with that which is holy. It's a very materialistic world. And this, therefore, is even more important than ever to study. And it is not by chance, therefore, that this information, this divine information, was revealed in the past few hundred years to prepare the world for Mashiach. And part of that preparation involves learning the Zohar, as the Zohar says itself. So no doubt whatsoever, whoever drinks from this fountain will definitely see a great deal that he did not know. And he will also experience a great deal that he could not experience before without this knowledge. Chapter 40 is in some ways a continuation from chapter 39. We're talking about kavanah, what it does. And because some of it is Kabbalistic in nature, I decided this time I'm going to read some of it from the book itself. I usually do not read directly from the Sefer, only because I try to somewhat summarize the main points and explain it in my own words. But because some of these ideas are a little bit difficult to understand, I think it will be better to read directly from the book so we don't miss any words. So here, we're going to be seeing again the difference between one who learns lishma for the sake of heaven, one who does not learn for the right reasons, and the difference between one who prays with kavanah or without kavanah. And the same is true with performance of a mitzvah. So you have the learning of the Torah, you're having the mitzvot, and you're having also the prayer that can be done in various ways. Last time I explained that in lishma, for the sake of heaven, you can have two opposites that are very, very different. One is a totally lack of lishma, which is called shelo lishma, for some personal interest, personal gain, or simply that it's not lishma, without any intent whatsoever, but it's not shelo lishma. It's not completely for one's own self-aggrandizement. In other words, he's learning Torah for his own personal gain. So you have different levels in how a mitzvah can be performed. And these levels of performance, whether again in prayer or in learning, make a big difference in what is happening in the upper world. In other words, how far do our deeds and our prayers reach? What kind of an engine do they have? Do they have a powerful engine that elevates them to the greatest heights, or is it a very weak engine that doesn't go too far? So we left off with the idea that even though the learning perhaps may have been done shelo lishma, that can be rectified in the future. When one learns lishma, you will be able to elevate even that which once upon a time was not done exactly lishma. In other words, even though it could be that eventually he will rectify it, so long as he doesn't do that, he says, that Torah that he learned, for example, will not go to the height of the Sefirot, to the level of the Sefirot, where the light of the Ein Sof shines. In other words, we're talking about, for example, the Olam of Yetzirah or Beriah, depending on the type of kavanah that he may have had. If he does not have any, they will not have that ability to rise all the way to the world of Sefirot. And the reason why it cannot do that is because the Sefirot, he says, are Elokut, they're a divinity. In the Sefirot, you have the light of the Or Ein Sof being dressed up. So that light is dressed up or included in the Sefirot, and without a certain level of the Hilu Rahim, or without a certain level of love and fear in the performance of the mitzvah, in the learning of the Torah, they simply do not have the ability to go up. The Salkaz, he says, Ulemekam, before Hashem. They do not have the ability to go and stand before Hashem. So where do they go? So we explained that they go to an external world. They stay below, but they don't only stay below, they stay in an external world, which means they're not part of the Sefirot. But here he adds something very interesting, that in this external world is where Malachim are. These external worlds is where you have Malachim standing, as he mentions in the name of Rabbi Chaim Vital. What does that mean? Because it's a known thing in the Kabbalah that from the performance of mitzvot, from the learning of Torah, one actually creates certain types of angels. There's different levels of angels. So certain angels are created by our deeds. And even though he doesn't elaborate too much about this topic, I'll just add an additional point, that it is also brought down that the type of angel that is created, whether its form is complete or incomplete, will depend on our kavanah. In other words, how well did we do? How well did we perform the mitzvah? Learn the Torah will produce an angel, in other words, a quality of angel that is really dependent on the quality of our mitzvot. So a malach, technically speaking, can be deformed or missing part of what it could have had the mitzvah be done properly. So he doesn't get into that. All he says is that this is the place, the lower world, in the external world, where there are malachim, and these are malachim that are created from the mitzvot. From which mitzvot? From the mitzvot that were done without kavanah. So from the Torah that is done b'li kavanah, you have malachim that are created in Yetzirah, and from the mitzvot that are done b'li kavanah, you have malachim that are created in Asiyah. And all these malachim have a form and shape to them. And the reason why he talks about form and shape is because in the end we're dealing with the physical world where the mitzvot are being performed. So part of what we are performing has form and shape. Because when we say things, when we learn, we are speaking physical we're talking physical matters. So the same way that we're talking physical matters, we are producing or creating that which, even though it's in the spiritual realm, has shape and form as well. And as I said before, that shape and form can sometimes be lacking as a result of the kavanah lacking in the mitzvah or in the Torah. So here, in dealing with the creating of malachim, we're not talking about a situation where there is no kavanah whatsoever. That wouldn't make sense, that malachim are being created even though nothing was thought about. There was some kavanah, there was some understanding of what is being done, but it wasn't exactly lishma, for the sake of heaven. So even though something is not done exactly lishma, l'shem shamayim, but as long as there is some kavanah, there is this idea of malachim, angels being created. But our deeds do not go too far. They are only able to go to asiyah, in a sense, because we're talking about the physical world, and our actions resemble more that which is physical. Lacking kavanah means that it does not go too far in the spiritual world. And the portion of the tzura that the malach may have has to do with the kavanah. In other words, the tzura, the form, is more related to the kavanah, because kavanah is how did we perform the mitzvah? What tzura did it have? So you have the homer, the physical, in this case the physical world, which is being affected, that is dependent on the actual deed that was done, but the tzura, the ultimate form, will depend on the kavanah. How much of a kavanah, or what type of a kavanah did the mitzvah have, or did the Torah have? He says that if we would be talking about Torah shelo lishma altogether, no kavanah whatsoever, not only no kavanah, but totally shelo lishma, for some personal gain, like he wants to be a Talmid Chacham, for example, then it would not even go up at all. It would not even go up to the chalot of the malachim, of the angels. It would not go even to the abode of the angels. Where would it be? It would stay completely down here below in the physical world, which is also called Mekor HaKlipot, the source of all the impure shells. Okay, so far what did we see? That the learning or the mitzvah that is done with a little bit of kavanah, not so much kavanah, not l'shem shamayim, is definitely a lot better than nothing. And it's definitely a lot better than if it's done shelo lishma, for totally the wrong reasons. But it does not have its full potential, as we will see later on, where he describes the koach, the power behind a mitzvah, as having wings to rise. And those wings represent the love and the fear by which the mitzvah should be done. So I'm going to read to you now what he says in the Haggadah, in the comment over here. He quotes here from the Zohar that those words that were uttered, that were said, Salka uvaka reki'im, they're able to go up and get through and penetrate the various heavens. The itar madetar, itav tav, and it awakens whatever it awakens, whether good or not. Remember, words are powerful. Good words awaken something positive. Bad words awaken something negative. Our actions down here are very powerful, and we don't even realize that. Rabbis tell us, don't underestimate the power of a beracha from any individual. It just could be that at that moment that the beracha is being said is a propitious time. Those words were heard. Amen was said. And Amen was said here, Amen was said upstairs. Ask everyone to bless you. You never know. But God forbid the other way around, somebody curses. Don't underestimate that either. Even though a person may be protected because of his merits, but you never know. Because sometimes that opens up a Pandora's box, as it's called in English, and they open up one's books in heaven. You know, by speaking Lashon Hara, for example, when somebody slanders somebody else, accuses somebody in a negative way, makes fun of them, he gets himself into trouble. His books are opened and examined as well. Words down here said below do something in the upper world, whether good or not, he says, depending what was said. So mila deoraita, it avid mine kala. Words of Torah, he says, also produce a certain voice, vesalik, and they go up. Kalin deoraita utzluta bakin rekin. He quotes another place where it says words of Torah and prayer penetrate. They actually penetrate, they go up. You don't need a rocket engine for this. To go to space, you need a rocket engine, but here you're going farther than that. You're going farther than that with words of Torah and prayer that are said especially with proper kavanah. So he continues on to say this is exactly what Shlomo Melech had in mind in Kohelet. You know, when you read a pasuk, there are various layers to it. You can have the pashut level, the layer of simple interpretation, literal interpretation, and you can have the deeper meaning, according to the Remez Sod, according to the Kabbalah. So here we will see a little bit what is the deeper meaning behind it. A very famous verse in Kohelet that says as follows: Ma yitron la'adam mikol amalo she'yamol tachat hashemesh. Solomon the king, the wisest of all men, says, what benefit does anyone gain from all his amal, faide, right? The benefit, right? What benefit does one gain from all the physical labor that he does in this world after he leaves this world? He doesn't take anything with him. From all the labor that he labors under the sun. So if you translate it, really, it makes sense. In other words, what do you gain from everything that you work so hard for in this world, while alive? The deeper meaning behind this is, what does one gain from all the labor that he labored in this world that is considered labor underneath the sun? But there is labor above the sun. What's the labor above the sun? The spiritual labor, the Torah mitzvot. In other words, what Shlomo Melech is talking about is the physical labor, what was done under the sun. But obviously there is something to gain from that which is Torah, Tefillah, and mitzvot. But he says that even that Torah that he performed, that he learned, right? Even all that which is spiritual nature, if he did it for his own honor, not for the honor of Hashem, is also not considered something very, very special. It's also considered tachat hashemesh, and has no yitaron, and has no benefit. In other words, why? Why is it considered underneath the sun? It's Torah. Because it stayed underneath the sun. It never went up. Right? Remember what we just said before? Some of the Torah, some of the mitzvot, some of the tefillah can go up. Some of it stays down below. Depends on the kavanah, depends if he prayed with a minyan. It depends on a lot of factors, whether the prayer is powerful or not. Did he cry when he prayed? All of this makes a difference. So here, in this pasuk of Shlomo Melech, he's not just talking about physical labor. The deeper meaning is even that which is spiritual, performance of mitzvot, learning of Torah, if he did not do it for the right reasons, he did it for himself, even that does not give him too much benefit, because it stays down here below. It is considered as though this is done underneath the sun. And he adds, this is what the rabbis meant by another saying, Ashrei mi sheba lekam v'talmudo biyado. Another very famous saying, fortunate is a person who has come to heaven and his Talmud, his learning, is with him. Well, what does that mean? The literal meaning is, fortunate is a person that comes to heaven with luggage, with his learning, with him. He didn't leave it behind, in other words, he didn't lose it, he came with it. By the way, I saw another meaning about that, saying, Hashem Yishek Talmudo Daika, in other words, his own learning, what he was mechadesh, what he, on his own, was able to elaborate and clarify with the insights, of course, that Hashem gave him. because everyone has that ability, depending on his neshama, to be able to elaborate further on what the Torah says through his own innovations, I guess we can use that word in English. Not that he's saying something completely new, but just another way of understanding or explaining something which contributes to understanding of the Torah. So that is his Talmud, his own Talmud that he produced, his own thoughts. But here he says that the idea of Talmudo biyado means that he studied properly, he performed the mitzvot properly, and therefore he came with it. It didn't stay behind in the lower world. He was actually able to take it. When he arrived, it was there. It didn't stay behind because he did it for the right reasons. So this is another way of understanding that saying of the rabbis. The fortunate is a person that was able to do things in the right way with the right kavanah, because then it accompanies him in the afterlife. Now he goes on to explain the point of kavanah altogether. Why do we really need kavanah for the Torah to rise? Why should the kavanah make a difference? After all, we're talking about Torah. Isn't Torah holy? So why would the Torah need kavanah to go up? So he says like this: even though the Torah and HaKadosh Baruch Hu are one, Shehu v'retzono echad, he, Hashem, and his will, in other words, the Torah, it's all one. I'll tell you perhaps briefly what he's going to say, and then I'll go through it. He's going to explain that the Torah, no matter that it's holy, when we speak it, when we learn it, it is physical, because words are being said, even though they're holy. And because they're physical, they are restricted in the physical world. That's where they stay. Unless they have some koach, additional koach, to propel them, to push them to the upper world. So this is, I'm just simplifying it right now, that even though they're holy words, but they're also physical. And because the physical world is somewhat restrictive, they stay behind unless these words have something else to propel them, to push them toward the higher worlds. So now, in using his words, even though it says Hashem fills the entire world equally, the light of Hashem is everywhere equally. Then what is different? What is different is on the receiving end. There's different worlds. They all receive. And where does the difference lie in the receiving end? In two very important areas where they are distinguished, where they differ. That is in the amount of light coming there, and in the amount of concealment or covers. It says right down here below, this physical world is the most concealed of all, with the least light coming down. In other words, there's greater light and there's less concealment in the upper worlds. Here, he says the light is very, very constricted. As we used the word before, tzimtzum. The tzimtzum is much greater down here below. So in this particular world, we have two disadvantages in a sense. We have a greater constriction of the light, which is why this world is physical. Go to space. As you get further and further away, what you will notice is less physical matter. And I once explained this, that perhaps this is my own opinion. That is why Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune are more gas. There may be, they say, a hard core. They don't know for sure. But think about it. Why that far, at that distance, there's more gas? Whereas if you go closer to Earth, Mars, Venus, Mercury, and the Moon, it's more of a core, more of a physical core. Again, that was just my idea, my explanation, that as you get further and further away, all the way to the stars, you're not dealing anymore with physical matter. Less and less. So same thing with the worlds. As you get away from this physical world, it becomes more and more spiritual. Less tzimtzum of the light. Less concealment. Less covers, as he says. So in this world, you have a very physical world as a result of all the tzimtzum, with a lot of levushim, a lot of covers, to the point where you even have klipat noga. Remember the famous klipat noga, the shell of noga, which contains the ability to do good and bad. This klipat noga is also a concealment for that which is permissible for us to eat, the chayot teorot, the clean animals. Included in that is also the nefesh achiyunit hamedaberet, it was the spirit of the human being. So what happens is, because of all these covers, when an individual learns Torah and prays without kavanah, even though these are letters of holiness, and klipat noga does not affect the letters of holiness, the klipat noga will not cover or conceal as much that which is holy as it does to that which is unholy, or as he calls it, dvarim betelim, words that are just plain, that have no holiness. Or as it covers all the animals that are clean. And he goes on to say, and even so, that Hashem is everywhere. There's no place in this universe that is lacking of His presence. Nonetheless, Ihu setiman de kol setimin venikra el mistater. Nonetheless, He's considered a God that conceals Himself, and He's hidden beyond everything. So His light and the flow, and the divine flow, the vitality, the divine vitality that comes down, is continuously concealed with many, many levushim garments, to the point of being dressed up in klipat noga, except for in the letters of the holy letters of the Torah and prayer. On the contrary, over there, through the Torah and prayer, the klipat noga is actually remedied. It is transformed into good, and it is included in the kedusha. Still, even so, the light of Hashem coming down in these holy letters is b'chinat tzimtzum. It is still considered a restricted form of light, because, what did we say before? The speech that we used for learning or for praying is physical. So in other words, regardless of the fact that the words are holy, regardless of the fact that Hashem is everywhere, and it should be that the klipat noga should not affect all of this, it shouldn't be as concealed. Nonetheless, it is concealed to a certain point, unless the tefillah and the Torah were with kavanah, or were lishma. Then that kavanah dresses itself up in the letters that were spoken. Why does it dress up? Because this is what brought out those words to be said to begin with. It's the kavanah. In other words, when we have something in mind, we're actually producing, generating something. It begins with a thought. So it is here responsible for the words that are coming out. It is therefore the makor and the shoresh, the root of those words. Therefore, it is able to elevate them to their place. What's their place? It all depends. To the 10 sefirot of the world of Yetzirah, or the 10 sefirot of Olam Abriya, depending on if it was done with love and fear, that are really powerful, the real powerful ones, or if it was done more through the love and fear that are more instinctive. As we explained in the past, there's different levels in the love and fear as well. So how far it will go, even though it was done as Shema, will also depend on what kind of love and fear was applied in the learning or in the praying. And he continues on to say, and there in those worlds, the light of Hashem is illuminated in those letters that were dressed up in kavanah, or in the prayer, or in the mitzvot, with a tremendous light. What it could not do, what it could not illuminate, so long as the letters or the words that were said are still down here in this physical world. All of this, of course, is still Mashiach comes, because what will happen when Mashiach comes? The whole world will be rectified. The whole world will be elevated from its physical state. When that happens, the Navi says, "V'nigla kvod Hashem." Hashem will be revealed. The kavod, the glory of Hashem will be revealed. So obviously at that point, everything is elevated automatically. Until then, you still have the various levels in the various worlds where some of them are more concealed than others. And it's only where there's less concealment where the mitzvah is able to, if the mitzvah is able to rise to that level, that it can have a greater effect, a greater light can shine through it. Another Haggadah that he adds here, another comment, which is a little bit longer, so I'm going to read it from inside. He says like this, over there in the upper worlds, מתגלה גם כן הייחוד העליון הנעשה בכל מצווה בתלמוד תורה. In those upper worlds, in other words, depending on where his Torah and prayer went, that is where the Yichud HaElyon, I guess you can translate the supernal unity of Hashem, happens. Shehu Yichud Midotav Yitbarach, which is the unity of his midot, shenichlалот zu bezu, that are combined or fused together, v'nimtakot hagvurot b'chasadim al yidei et ratzon ha'elyon. So this is a little hard to understand, but basically he's saying like this: at that level, at that high level, what you have is also a very powerful yichud, the yichud of his midot, Hashem's midot, like fusing together, and as a result of that fusion, you have the chasadim being able to sweeten the gvurot. Chasadim means kindness, and gvurot means justice, din, and that is very, very powerful, because when that happens, that the chasadim are able to sweeten the gevurot, this affects what happens down here in this world. When you have more chesed than you have gvurah, it's obviously apparent. You don't see that too much today. When you have war and death and suffering, that is the opposite sign. You have a lot of din. So here, what you have is a situation, obviously depending on how much of this is accomplished, that the Yehud in those worlds of the Midot of Hashem bring about a fusion of the Midot, which therefore sweeten, the Chasadim sweeten the Gevurot in that propitious moment that it happens. When the light of Hashem reveals itself in a very powerful way, B'ta'aruta deletata, through the action that was taken down here below in this world. What kind of action? A mitzvah, or learning of Torah. Shebahem melubash retzon ha'elyon, because in the Torah what you have is the actual divine will. But the Ikara Yechud, nonetheless, the main unity of Hashem is Lemala, Mala Be'olam Atzilut, in the highest worlds of all, which is Atzilut, because that is where the essence of the midot of Hashem are. Bema Atzilan, in the one from whom they emanate. B'sham hu mahut v'atzmut retzon ha'elyon en sof gamken ve'eratan levad hi meira b'ya b'chol olam. So there, in the upper world, you have the essence of the retzon ha'elyon, and what comes down into the lower world is only what it illuminates in Bria, Yetzirah, and Nasiyah, each one according to its level. It goes on, ve'af shenefesh ha'adam ha'osek b'torah u'mitzvah zu ena me'atzilut. So, even though this nefesh, as we've said in the previous chapter, not all nefashot are from the same world, even though the nefesh of this individual who's learning and doing the mitzvah or praying, his nefesh is not from Atzilut, doesn't make a difference. מכל מקום, רצון העליון המלובש במצווה זו, והוא עצמו הדבר הלכה והתורה שעוסק בה. In other words, the will of Hashem that is dressed up in this mitzvah, or in the actual halacha or Torah, which is really the will of Hashem. The halacha, the Torah, is the will of Hashem. So even though Hashem is directly connected to this Torah, Shosekba, that he is engaged in, and that Torah is Hu Elokut, that is divine, that is divinity, in the light of the Ein Sof that is coming down on it, שהוא רצונו אחד וברצונו יתברך האציל מידותיו המיוחדות בו יתברך, and through his will he actually brought about the midot, these unique midot, ועל ידי גילוי רצונו המתגלה על ידי עסק תורה ומצווה זו, הן נכללות זו בזו ונמתקות הגבורות בחסדים בעת רצון זו. So he explains that it says the will of Hashem, that this is exactly what should happen when one learns Torah or prays or does a mitzvah, that it should have this kind of effect, that the Hasadim should be able to sweeten the Gevurot at that time. Even though, who is the one that's behind this? A nefesh that is not from Atzilut. Makes no difference. Still, this is what Hashem wanted, that His will, dressed up in the mitzvah, dressed up or included in the Torah, should be able to accomplish this. That was this comment. Now he explains, getting back to the two wings, as they're called. The two wings are the chilu urechimu, the love and fear of Hashem. They are used to describe derech mashal, by parable. As an example, the ahava and yirah, the love and the fear that really comprise kavanah. Because proper kavanah has to have really both, as we've said last time, not just one without the other. You need the two wings. So the reason why two wings are used is for the following reason. But before we get into that mashal, I'm going to read to you what he says here in the side comment. It's a little bit Kabbalistic about these wings. If you recall, the Sefirot are formed in such a way where there's a right and left, even though there is real no right and left in the spiritual world. But for us to understand how they are different and what each one represents, they appear to us like that. So you have Chesed, which corresponds to Ahava, which is the right arm. I'm talking about arms or wings. Chesed is on the right. And Gvura, which corresponds to Yirah or fear, is on the left arm. So he says like this. In the Tikkunim, it's brought down that the bird, which has two wings, corresponds or relates to, I should say, to the angel Matat. I'm not going to spell out the whole name. Right? Mem tet tet. You know who I mean? Yeah. So the bird relates to that angel. His head is the Yud. Talking about the Yud of Hashem, of the name of Hashem. His body is Vav. And the two wings are the Hey and the Hey. Right? Because we have the Hey, the first Hey, and have the last Hey in the name of Hashem. Right? You follow me so far? Yeah. Then he goes on and says that Olam HaYetzirah, the world of Yetzirah, is called Matat. And in the Vav, you have the Gufei HaHalachot. The Vav corresponds to the main body of Halachot, Sheba Mishnah. Why? Because the Vav represents the midot. And the relationship between midot and halachot is very clear, because when it comes to halachot, you have to decide what is kosher and what is not, who is right and who is wrong. When you have a court case, for example, you have all kinds of halachot to determine right from wrong. And that is done through the vav, which is the midot, which is exactly what they do. Then you have Resha Diled, the head, is the mochin. It's more the logic and the reasoning, the brains. And that is Pchinat Chabad. That relates to Chokhmah Binah Vadat, which is the Pnimiyut Halachot, which is the deeper layer, or the more internal layer of the Halachot, the secrets and the greater reason behind them. And then the two wings are the chilu rachimu, the love and fear, which are represented in the hey ila'ah, in the first hey, the higher hey as it is called, which is love, and the lower hey, which is yir'at ata. What's yir'at ata? What's a lower yir'ah? What's a lower fear? That corresponds to the ol malchut shamayim, to the yoke of heaven, and to the basic fear, like one has for a king, not the greater fear that one has when he loves Hashem, that he is fearful from not chas v'shalom, becoming distant from him. Shehi yir'ah chitzonit v'niglit. It is a more external type of fear, more revealed but more an external. Masha'enkin yir'ah ila'ah, the higher fear, it is a fear of boshet, of shame, and that is me'anistarot l'Hashem Elokeinu, that is that which is hidden from us. Ve'i bechokhmah ila'ah, and that is in the chokhmah, in the higher chokhmah, which is Yud Shel Shem Havaya Baruch Hu, which is in the Yud of the name of Hashem. Okay, just for you to understand a little bit of where this is headed, as far as the wings are concerned, what is being represented here. We're dealing with all types of aspects of Torah too. As we're going to soon see with Kabbalah, you have Chumash Mikra, you have Mishnah, you have Gemara, you have Zohar, Kabbalah, you have Pshat, Remez, Drash, and so the various levels of understanding something. Different levels, call them different worlds perhaps, but even in the learning itself, there's different levels of holiness. The Torah itself is the word of Hashem. You can put a Chumash on top of a Mishnah and Gemara. You can't put a Mishnah and Gemara on top of a Chumash. See, the different levels of holiness. One is the word of Hashem directly, and one is what the Chachamim, even though it's the oral transmission, still dictated by them. So you have various levels here corresponding to the letters in the name of Hashem, and therefore he says the same is true with the kanfei ha'of, the wings of the bird. What is with the wings of the bird? As it says, b'shtayim yofef, just like a bird needs the two wings to fly. The wings of the bird is very similar to the arms of the human being. And in the Tikkunim he explains that those that learn Torah and perform the mitzvot b'dechilu rahimu, with love and fear, are called children. If not, they're called efrochim, chicks. Can't fly yet. The lo yachlin lefarcha, they cannot fly. So now he says, okay, why do we compare it to the bird? Because he says, just like the wings of a bird help it fly, but that doesn't mean that they are the more important part of the bird. They just help it fly. Its life, its vitality does not come from the wings. Its life does not depend, he says, on the wings. As there is a halakha that if the wings fell off from a bird, it's still kosher. So what's the ikar for a bird? What's the most important part of the bird? Its head and the rest of the body. Because the wings are just there to help the head and body, lefarcha behum, to climb, in other words, to fly. And the same is true with the Torah and mitzvot. They are the ikar yichud ha'elyon. They represent the main supernal unity of Hashem, because it is through them that the revelation of Hashem comes about. The will of Hashem is revealed. And the dechilu rehimu, the love and the fear that we apply to them, they help elevate them. They help make them fly. They help them get to the higher place, where the light of Hashem, of Ein Sof, is, which is either in B'riyah or Yetzirah, depending on the level of the Kavanah. So he just adds one more comment on the side, that even though we said that depending on one's Kavanah, they're able to reach the worlds of Yetzirah and B'riyah, he says, in reality, even in the world of Asiyah, in the 10 Sefirot of Kedusha, which is the place of the mitzvot ma'asiyot, the physical mitzvot that we actually perform with our hands. These are physical mitzvot. V'chen mikra. Same thing with chumash, affecting the olam ha'asiyah. And he's going to explain that, because at first it sounds a little bit strange, because I just told you that chumash is even holier and higher. And here it's telling us it's affecting olam ha'asiyah. So he's going to explain. In Mishnah, the revelation of the Yehud and so Baruch Hu is in Yetzirah, and in Talmud it's in Briyah. The revelation is in a different world. The Haino shebelimud mikra. So now he explains. Don't think that it's less. Mikra is any less. On the contrary, in the learning of Chumash, the learning of Torah, mitpashet hayechud ve'or en so Baruch Hu me'atzilut ad ha'asiyah. That light that is shining in the higher world is able to go down all the way to Asiyah. Because as we said earlier, that light, even though it's very, very powerful in a higher world, this less tzimtzum, it still shines down, it still comes down. So here, through the learning of Chumash, through the learning of Torah, it is able to go from Atzilut all the way to Asiyah. Ubemishnah, it goes only to Yetzirah. And in Talmud, it goes only till Beriyah. Because in the end, they are all in Atzilut. But the question is, how far do they come down to? And he says, about the Kabbalah, ena mitpashetet klar me'atzilut, to the lower worlds. The learning of Kabbalah, it does not go further down. Okay, without getting too much into this, this is very, very deep. The idea, I think, is made very, very clear that depending, not only if the Kavanah is there, but even depending what the learning is all about, it also affects different worlds, depending on what it relates to. Remember, Talmud, you're using the brains. It's more analytical. It's sichli. It's using the mind. It's a different form of expression of that Torah. Whereas Kabbalah, obviously, you're delving into the secrets of the Torah, and it has a whole different reaction to the individual himself as well, the light that he draws upon himself, and in the upper worlds. So, just like in Tefillah or in the mitzvot, he is able to elevate to either Yetzirah or Briyah, depending on the Kabbalah. The same thing with the learning of Torah, depending on how it's done. As I may have told you last time, the more powerful Torah, the Torah that is done lishma, for the sake of heaven, it offers actual protection to the individual from sin and from trouble. Because the question is, if the Torah is an antidote against the evil inclination, then why do people sin even though they learn Torah? It's an antidote. The answer is, the simple answer is, because they didn't learn it lishma, for the sake of heaven. The real power of Torah in being an antidote is only when it's done l'shem shamayim. Then it offers a real protection and a constant protection, even after he stopped learning. When you do a mitzvah, at the time you perform the mitzvah, it protects you from trouble. Here you have Torah, which is not only protecting you from trouble, it is saving you from sin, saving you from the Yetzirah, from the evil condition, as long as it's Torah Lishma. So, as I've said many, many times, it's not only about what we're doing in the upper world, it's what happens to us at the time that we're performing the mitzvot, or learning the Torah, or praying. If it's done with the two wings, then it's obviously more powerful. And the last part of the chapter, he asks a little bit about the two wings, about the Chilur Rachimu. Just briefly, he says, but wait a minute. Ahava and Yir'ah, fear and love for Hashem, really are mitzvot. They're also part of the 613 commandments. Then why call them wings? Wings give the appearance as though they're secondary. Didn't we just say that before? The main part of the bird is the head, the body. So by calling them wings, you're treating them as though they're secondary. Aren't they part of the 630 mitzvot? They are. So why are they called wings? He says they're called wings for the following reason. Tachlit ha'ava, what is the ultimate purpose of love? That the Torah says love Hashem. It's not the love itself. Love Hashem so that you can perform the mitzvot properly. The love is not the goal. You have to come to the point of love to Hashem, fear of Hashem. No, these are means to a greater end. They are intended to facilitate the observance of Torah mitzvot for the real reasons. Tachlit ahava, therefore, the purpose of the love is ha'avodah mi'ahava, is to do the service of Hashem out of love. Because ahava b'li avodah, service of Hashem without love, ahava b'tanugim, such a love that does not contain in itself the service of Hashem is a very, very high form of love that is a certain closeness with Hashem, which is a me'en olam haba, which is something like olam haba, resembling the world to come, and part of the receiving of the reward. But we're dealing with the physical world. In our lifetime in this world, hayom la'asotam. It says, today, while we're alive, we're supposed to do. That means Judaism requires actions to be done. Oh, I have a good heart. I love Hashem. I really feel it. No. Hayom la'asotam. The Torah emphasizes this world, this life is about action. Action needs to be taken. Today, it needs to be done. Lemachar lekabel secharam. Tomorrow is to receive the reward. So now he says something very powerful. And with this he concludes the chapter. Whoever did not come, however, to this midah, to this quality, to taste the semblance of Olam Haba, he didn't come yet to that level, to that point. And he still thirsts. In other words, in his heart he thirsts and he yearns to be close to Hashem the whole day. However, he doesn't go beyond that. He doesn't attempt to fill, or as they say in English, he doesn't attempt to quench that thirst. He has that desire, he has the interest, but he doesn't do anything about it. He doesn't quench his thirst with what? With Torah that is in front of him, that is before him. What is he like? What is he compared to? Like somebody who's standing by the river and yelling out, I want water. Give me water to drink. And on such individuals, the prophet complained. All those who claim they're thirsty, why don't you just go to the waters? So he says, what is he talking about, the prophet? In other words, if you read it simply, it doesn't make any sense, because whoever is thirsty and really wants to learn, if that's what it's talking about, because the rabbis tell us the water is the Torah, but if that's what the prophet is saying, then whoever is thirsty, why doesn't he just go ahead and learn on his own? Why does he have to wait until the prophet yells at him, go ahead, if you're really serious? What does it mean then? It means obviously that this is the ultimate goal, is to do the service of Hashem. It's not just the learning itself. It's not just the love itself. In the end, if you really want it, you need the Torah to show you the way to observe the mitzvot. So go to water and quench your thirst means go and do something about it so that you can come to this point of connecting to Hashem in the most powerful way. Without learning Torah, it's not possible for a Jew to grow. It's not possible for one to become really connected to Hashem. The Torah teaches us, and even that is not enough. The rabbis tell us still, Gadol haTalmud shemevi lidei maaseh. Great is the learning because it leads to maaseh. Which one is more important, the learning or the maaseh? The maaseh, because we spoke about taking actions. But great is the learning because it leads. Without the learning, you will not do it. Without going to a shul, without listening to a lecture, how is somebody going to awaken and decide to do anything? So the learning is also a means. And same thing with ahava. It's not the ahava itself that we're striving to get. It's that we need ahava in order to be able to observe the mitzvot properly. If we want to do the mitzvot, if we want to learn, if we want to pray properly, we need the wings. How are we going to get the wings? Right? By learning. By learning Torah, we will be able to know how to do it. So in the end, ahava, the love of Hashem, which is the wings, the ahava and the yirah, help us observe the mitzvot the way Hashem wants us to. This can only come about through the learning of the Torah. In the end, it all boils down to thirst. What does thirst mean? People who really desire, people who really feel they're missing something, they really need it. Hopefully they will search for the answers to their questions. Hopefully they will find an individual that will direct them and show them the way. Hopefully they will do whatever is necessary. But you first have to want it. You first have to have an interest. You first have to feel that you're thirsty, that you're missing something. Some people say, oh, I'm fine, I'm happy, I don't need anything. It's never going to happen no matter how much you talk to them. They really have to feel a need. They have to feel a thirst. So the Navi calls out to them, yells at them, what are you waiting for? But you know what the famous saying in psychology says? You can only draw a horse to the water, you can't force him to drink. You can take him there, but he has to make that decision to drink. And it's not a coincidence that the prophet says that when Mashiach comes, everyone will feel a thirst, and everybody will be hungry, not for food, but for the Dvar Hashem, for the word of Hashem. Why is that? Because the sheker will disappear, the falsehood will disappear. And when the falsehood disappears, they will realize that all the vanities of this world are worthless, and they don't truly bring happiness. Not only that, they will realize that the main priority is the connection to Hashem, the service of Hashem, and not the hard physical labor that they've been so immersed in. But so long as Mashiach hasn't come, we have this evil inclination who's competing for attention, distracting us from the real purpose of life. That's why he reminds us at the end of the chapter that even though love is something beautiful and special, that in itself is not the goal. The goal is to perform the mitzvot. This is what will make a change in the world. After all, that's what we're trying to accomplish. A change in the world, a tikkun. With the light of Hashem, we will be able to shine through all that darkness, all the way down to Olam Asiyah. That is where the Jew has this mission. He was given the mitzvot to do that. Without those mitzvot, you can't do that. And even when we do the mitzvot, if it's done as a routine, as we've explained before, it doesn't accomplish. On the contrary, it eventually, God forbid, can become a burden. If somebody does something out of routine and he doesn't appreciate it, he will stop doing it. He will feel it's, ugh, what do I need this for? He doesn't identify with it. He doesn't understand the importance of it. So once again, the learning of the Torah is the only way that a Jew will be able to see the importance of it, and it's the only guide that he can ever have that will show him the right way to connect to Hashem. Without it, how could you figure it out on your own? That's the only GPS that we have that shows us the way. And that is the only way that a Jew can grow. Spiritual growth can only come about through the observance of Torah mitzvot, and especially if it is done with the wings, with the Ahava and Yirah, because they will elevate him to the greatest height possible.